Welcome to Acceptable Accuracy. I am your host, and I'm joined today by my now year-long Acceptable Accuracy co-host. Would you like to introduce yourself?
What's up, everyone? It's Tyler, and I am the other co host of Acceptable Accuracy. Happy New Year, everyone. It's 2025. Can you believe it?
I can, and it's crazy. And actually, I like years that end are multiples of five. So I'm hoping 2025 is a good year. I don't know.
hmm
It's a
I
weird.
mean, we're about to have a great president in the White House, so.
That's true. And I want to say that's because of our most recent episode prior to the election that said, go out and vote for your gun rights. I'm pretty sure we influenced
Exactly.
exactly one person to do that. So, yeah. Let's be real though, it was all the Amish people in Pennsylvania that got Trump elected. So don't
Oh,
listen to the Amish.
100%. The Amish, they've been crushing it, man. Aren't they doing stuff like in Florida right now, too, or North Carolina, building
Yeah,
houses for like
building little
crazy
mini
cheap?
houses for people that
Yeah.
are displaced due to the hurricane still,
hmm
which is crazy to me. But that's a whole other subject for another day. Tyler, what are we going to cover today on this first episode of the new year?
Yeah. So once again, like we mentioned, it's the new year, and one thing that I really wanted to do is to do a year in review. I want to look back in this past year of acceptable accuracy, this past year of Philip and Tyler, and really reflect on it because I think it's really easy for us to, of course, yes, it's important to live in the present and move forward, but I think it is also important to look back and celebrate our wins and also look back and be like, okay, what are some areas where we can improve in? One thing that it's crazy because I actually just noticed it behind me is one thing that I started in the new year last year was I got this from Dr. Julie something. I can't remember her name, but she said, you get a jar and write down a good moment of the week in 2025. If you can't tell, I stopped about halfway through because I forgot all about it. But I got half. I stopped around June, which is hilarious. But hey, I got that far. So even then, I haven't even looked back. But scroll. In fact, I'm just gonna randomly open one and see. Let's look back at a good moment of 2025, 2024. My mistake. All right, let's see. What is this one all about? Definitely not that one. That was a good moment, but and then it became a bad moment later on.
Was it your shotgun experience?
Sure, that's exactly what it is.
I know it was not.
That's totally what it is. Oh, hey, look at that. So if you look around me, I'm a plant person. So this is actually related to my plants. One of my
Nice.
plants was blooming, and then I made a stand for one of my plants. So it's just a little accomplishment that I made that I actually have somewhat of a green thumb because in the past I've killed many, many plants. So I was clearly excited about that. So, but that was kind of one thing that I did last year, and I will be continuing this year. I'd like to look at all of these, and then I will be doing a new one for 2025. So, but all that to say, today's episode will be just a conversation between Phil and I reflecting on the last year, and then, of course, looking forward to things that we're excited for in the new year. So that's what today's episode is going to be about.
Awesome. Yeah, and this kind of spawned from us having conversations before and after other podcasts where we're like, we should have recorded that.
hmm
And a lot of times we get unintentionally get good information either out of self-discovery or discovery from other individuals that we've had on the podcast, and also fairly entertaining content in general as a result of just hanging out and talking. So trying to frame everything within a subject in this year, again, like Tyler said, is looking back at the highlights of 2024, and then even trying to delve into some plans that we have for 2025, whether it's from, and obviously it's a shooting podcast, so we'll focus around that, but maybe also some goals that we have for the podcast. I know I've got a couple. Tyler and I intentionally did not run many of these by each other in advance, just so that they could be a bit of a surprise and be a little more conversational.
hmm
So, Tyler, how about you kick us off with some of the highlights that you had from 2024? I'll pick the category, and because this is near and dear to my heart,
Okay.
let's start off with competitions from last year.
Okay. So competition wise, I think one thing that I'm very impressed with myself on is I did pretty much every single except for one USPSA competition at our local club, which is something that I've never done before. I think this is my third season doing USPSA. And last year, I think I only did like two because I was very distracted. and my priorities were a little not straight. So, and because of that, they weren't where it needed to be. So this year, I really want to be able to go to each competition, hang out with the guys, and go to the range and go shooting, do these competitions. And then I officially became a what are they called again? Class
Class.
or level?
Yep.
I'm
Class.
a B. That's right. I'm a B class shooter in limited optics. So because I wanted a magwell in my gun. That's the only reason why I did it over carry optics. Which ironically enough, people told me that if I was in carry optics, I would probably be a high B, maybe even low A. I'm like, okay, I don't care. I really don't care.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. My pistol that I shoot primarily, the magwell is such a pain to get on and off, and the
Hmm.
mechanism they use to retain the magwell is really stiff, and I feel it's made out of plastic, unfortunately. So
Hmm.
it's one of those things where I know it's going to get worn out, and my ability to find a replacement is probably going to be pretty low. So I just leave the magwell on it, and I shoot my Smith& Wesson competitor in limited optics as well too.
Hmm.
But yeah, Tyler, I think from a perspective of watching you surpass like myself from like USPSA score perspectives, it's been really fun to watch. And I think you've even Kyle, we've had on this podcast many times before. He is hands down the best shooter that we have in our group of people that we shoot with,
Oh
right?
yeah. Oh yeah.
But I know you beat him on a couple stages this year, and I think that's
Like
and
two,
obviously
but
well,
yes,
I yeah
two out of like what, six competitions and like eight stages each. So I
yeah,
beat him in
but I
two.
but I still think those two that you beat him in were not necessarily ones that he did poorly in. They were like outright you had an opportunity to shoot faster than he did. Obviously,
Yeah.
yep. Obviously, every stage is set up to be like everyone has their strengths and their weaknesses, right? When
Oh
it
yeah.
comes to shooting stages, stages that tend to be very fast are Tyler's kind of like cup of tea. I think you're also pretty good at memorization stages as well too, just
Oh
based on your
no,
personality. So,
I'm
no,
terrible at memorization stages, man. I'm terrible. Well, think about the sectional. I guess speaking of
yeah,
competitions, we can
that's
talk
fair.
about the USPSA sectional. That competition, it was definitely a new experience for me because I've never done a level two competition before. And looking back, all of us did not do very well except for
No,
Kyle. Kyle actually did pretty well overall. But I know for me, I did not do well because I could not keep up with I feel like 90% of the stages were memory stages. And because of that, it really got in my head. And I kept having mics, or actually not even just mics, but failure to engage because I couldn't remember which was which. And these targets were so far away to where I couldn't even verify after looking because I'm like, what am I going to do? So it really messed me up. Or I'll take multiple attempts at the same target because I thought I hit it when in reality, or I thought I didn't engage it yet when in reality I did. So we'd get there and there'd be like four shots on target. I'm like, hey, at least I'm hitting my target, but hey, that one is a failure to engage. Whoops. So that was rough.
yeah, that was a rough match. That was from a personal performance standpoint as well. That was probably the worst match of the year.
Hmm.
Similar to you, I just had a really hard time getting started. I don't do great with memorization stages, which is weird because, as we'll go into later with the Zombie Invitational, it there's a lot of memorization, but in a different way, like based on
Hmm.
the type of firearm that you have to use, and the way you have to use it, the round type you have to use if you use a shotgun. But for whatever reason, the sectional, the stages were just getting every single one of them until the end, and I kind of just said, I'm done with trying to be serious about this. And maybe that was my problem, was being too serious.
Maybe.
But I really had
Yeah.
a hard
Well, I
time.
mean,
Like I was outright missing targets, like you said. I was engaging
hmm,
multiple times. I was standing in the wrong spot. I would overrun a position. Never became unsafe at all. But it wasn't until after lunch, I think, for both of us, where that was the one where I think it was either right before or right after lunch. We went right into that super fast stage where there was like
yeah.
a total overall time that you had to make it in, and it was really fast. I think after that, things kind of cleaned up for both of us, and we just had a good time the rest of the day. And it's
I
nothing to
agree.
do with the match itself. Like the match was set up really well, and the stages were very challenging. But it was just sometimes you get in your own head, and then sometimes it gets into the whole squad, and sometimes you all just kind of suffer as a result.
Yeah, I agree, and I think mindset is such an important thing with everything, but especially with shooting, to where I know it's easy to have that cognitive bias when you go into something. And I've been guilty of saying this before too. Like if one bad thing happens, especially early on, and I will say this phrase, "Oh, it's going to be that day," right? So
Yeah.
because of that, now I've already gone into the competition saying, "Oh, it's going to be one of those days." So now the whole time, my brain is I'm psyching myself like, "Well, it already sucks. That stage messed me up." So now it's gonna just gonna mess me up for the rest of the day. When in reality, it's having to kind of conquer that, overcome that mental block. Is like I had one bad stage. It's not going to affect me. It's not going to affect the rest of the day, or I'm not. I'm going to choose not to let it affect it. Right. So that's something that I can do. I want to do a better job. And I think that's something I want to improve on for this next year, where it's making sure, like, okay, just because I've one bad stage, I can't let that affect the rest of my stages.
With that whole mental block and not trying to impact yourself, there's a saying, and I can't actually find who is attributed to. I was trying to pull it up, but it's the adage of the "so what, now what." So you've done
Mm-hmm.
something that's messed you up, and that you already didn't perform the way that you wanted to. Now, what are you going to do with it? And a lot of professional athletes will use this when you're in mid game. Like, let's say you've missed a block, or you threw an interception, or something bad happened, right? And you can use the same thing in your personal life. So what, now what, right? Like the action that you had in the past, while that could have impact on the future, you have control of what your actions are going to be going forward, right? And you can choose to be in your own head and get out of it. Now, it's a lot easier said than done, right? And I think that was a
Hmm.
great example of that match where a lot of us had a hard time getting out of that funk. And I think we all kind of unfortunately fed off that negativity.
I agree.
With other matches where we've had that positivity and fed off each other with that positivity, I think
Hmm.
everyone as a result did better. And that is a big thing as well too. And I think being surrounded by people in life in general, and just same thing with matches applies, where you're going to have that uplifting like feeling of being around people that want to also be successful. So I don't know. But yeah, from USPSA, I think that same thing. I think I only missed one USPSA match as well too. Uh, During the year I was down in Chicago or something like that. But yeah, just
Yeah,
trying
it's
to
either
be at
Chicago
all
or
those.
Wisconsin, but
Yeah,
yeah.
just trying to be at all of the USPSA matches and hanging out with the guys and getting outside and getting some sun. Right. I don't know. This time of year in Michigan, we're all pretty pasty as a
Yeah.
result of the.
Speak for yourself.
Yeah, well,
I'm kidding.
I'm white, so
I'm, I'm, I will not say a joke that I could get in trouble for or get canceled. But all right, so but either way, I agree. I think this was a good year for both of us, USPSA. I mean, we either gained or maintained our B class level. So, right? Are you B?
I am B with PCC. I am
That's
not
right.
B with pistol yet.
Gotcha.
I was getting there slowly with carry optics, but then switching over to limited optics kind of put me behind a little bit.
That makes sense.
So
Hmm.
that's okay. I think I would like to be in B, and that will happen at some point. But maybe this is some changes for 2025. There's a lot more dry firing that needs to happen.
I agree. That is
Yep.
something that I've definitely not done as much as I've done. Which I have in the past, and I can definitely notice because now I feel like I'm a lot sloppier with my draws. When I say slop, it's not much, but it's enough for where, for my personal critique, like my, I guess, level, I'm like, I should be easily be able to get a master grip and a nice presentation. I had a buddy of mine who also does USPSA. He lives out in Ohio, and we're chatting. He was asking me like what my draws were, and I told him that right now, because I haven't dry fire as much or practiced as much as I used to, from concealment, I'm looking at probably around like a 1-3, like consistent 1-3 alpha at like 7 to 10 yards, right? And then from my USPSA, I'm about the same, only because I don't practice as much. So I'm probably looking around 1-3. And he told me that he averages a point 0.9.
Dang.
Like, you jerk.
Is
I
this
knew
the
he
guy
was
that was supposed
good,
to be
but
at the sectional with us?
yes, he was supposed to be at the
Yeah.
sectional. I'm like, I knew he was good, but I didn't realize he was that good. I'm like, what? You have a point 0.9 draws? Like, yeah. I'm like, you jerk. I didn't know
Dang.
that. He told me point 0.9 to 1.0. I'm like, whatever. He did tell me that if I wasn't going to do the Saturday match and he could do the Sunday, he said he had a bunch of masters and he had like one GM buddy of his that he was going to shoot with. I'm like, what?
Dang. Man, is he master? Like, or is he
No,
A? Oh, okay.
I think he's a high B or low A.
Okay.
Hmm.
Gotcha. No, that's good. And that's always good to have like a place you want to get to as well. And I think from what I've heard is if you want to get master or grandmaster level, you're really changing your lifestyle. And it's pretty much the only thing that you're focusing on from
Hmm.
like any kind of hobby is your dry firing and live firing at a rate that is pretty much unsustainable to have any other pastimes at all or try to do
Hmm.
anything else to get to that level. And there are a lot of like masters and GMs that will get to that point and they'll get to the big win and then they'll kind of step out of the limelight, right? And either they'll go into training full time or they'll step back, right? So for myself, I'm always trying to maintain that like happy medium of improving, but also not trying to make it too much of like a life change where it's taking away from other things that I find important in my life.
Oh, for sure.
So obviously
That's
we do
why
a
Lego
podcast based
Master.
on shooting, but yeah, I do also have other hobbies as well too, unfortunately. And I wrestle with sometimes too, personally, like, do I take a step back with some of the other hobbies to focus more on shooting? But then
Yeah.
I also realize that I don't know if I'd be happy with the person I would become. But then I am also like, yeah, well, can I really become an expert in both areas? And maybe the answer is no, I don't know.
Hmm.
But one thing I will say that you and I did this year that has now started to translate off to the rest of the group is when we go to the range to go shooting, we are making a point of having a goal to get out of the time that we spent shooting. And yes, it's good to go out and have fun, but it's also good to have like, hey, these are the drills that we're going to do today. These are the things that we want to improve on. Um, and like we can get into that in a little bit too, is when we talk about things that we've done outside of competition. But going back to competition, one of the things I wanted to talk about as well were two other side messages that were not USPSA related that you guys have heard us a lot or talk about a lot, right? And those two are the Wolverine 5K and the Zombie Invitational. We did not do a recap of the Wolverine 5K because honestly, it was a bit of a disappointment this year. And Tyler is laughing because this is something that we struggle with how to approach. Traditionally, the Wolverine 5K has been a fantastic match. This is our
Hmm.
second year running as hardcore, our third year together.
Hmm. And this is
And
like your fifth year total, right?
yes, yep. This is also the year that we shot the least amount we've ever shot. I think we had something in the 20 rounds or so. And poor Britt had like 11 rounds that he shot total, I
Exactly.
think.
Let's think about that, guys. We, as a team, collectively, between the four of us, we probably only shot actually because Daryl, I think he essentially only did the long range stuff, and he did have one stage where he shot a few more, but collectively, as a 4-man squad, I think we did 60 rounds as a team,
Yeah, that sounds about right. Unfortunately.
which typically you're probably going. I think you're supposed to do like 200 a person or something like that.
Yeah, and a lot of this too is there's a few things that kind of happened down there, and I don't want to go deep into it because I'm not generally a negative person, but there's a few things that happened, and Tyler and I, Brent and Daryl, put a lot of time into like preparing for this match, right? Like a lot of time. One thing that was different for us this year was the navigation was definitely harder. We lost about an hour on navigation just due to getting lost on navigation. But the other thing that happened was the match added additional teams this year, and they also removed time overall. Tyler actually did the mathematics on it. Discovered, I think it was what most hardcore teams got, or all hardcore teams on average got 9 out of the 11 stages completed in 2023,
Yep.
right? And then in this year, I think it was an average of was it like
It was
five or
like
six
three or
stages?
four, I think.
It was yeah, it was not great. So obviously, there's an issue there with timing on it. The ruck part of it is obviously part of the challenge and part of the competition, but you have to balance that out with the shooting as well to make it enjoyable if you want to spend your time on it. And obviously, we're very much big proponents of doing hard things, but you also, when you prepare for one thing and get something else different out of it, it can be a little bit disappointing. And unfortunately, I will say that this year's Wolverine 5K was disappointing.
Hmm.
Now, obviously, running a match is very difficult. Getting things just right, getting timings right, and everything is hard. Balancing it with, obviously, you have to make money off the match. Otherwise, why have the match? Can be very difficult. But I will contrast that with the Zombie Invitational, which I think was probably one of the best matches I have ever shot. And a lot of that, I think, was around because obviously we're like lot of cool people went this year that hadn't gone years past, Tyler included. But we got all of the stages done. We got them all done in time before it was even dark out, and they were all really well done.
Hmm.
So I'm going to stop talking for a second there because I feel like I kind of rattled on for a little bit, but I'll get your take, Tyler, on the Wolverine, I guess, for a little bit, and then also your take on the Zombie Invitational, being that it was your first match of the year, or
Yeah,
your
so
first Zombie Invitational ever.
I know what you meant by that. So to recap, of course, I think Phil put it perfectly when it comes to the Wolverine 5K. It's an event that I've done what 3 times now, and I've
Yeah,
enjoyed the first two. I even think of my first year where we were the OG plus three, the old guys. I'm sorry, plus one. OG three, old guys three, plus one, the one Asian. So,
the
and
one young guy.
I know the one young guy, but and even with that, we still got through probably 70% of the stages, even though we
Yeah,
had to waste like 40 minutes looking for a missing radio, and we skipped a couple stages because either we didn't want to wait in the super long line, or actually I got injured a little bit. My shoulder got really hurt because I think we're flipping logs or tires beforehand, and well, there was a stage where we had to flip logs, and I just didn't feel comfortable with it, so we decided not to do it. But we ended up running out of time anyway, so it worked out. So we got to a different stage. And second year, we got through all of the stages.
hmm
And finally, and last year, or this year, I guess it is last year in 2024, it was frustrating. And I could tell we weren't the only ones. There are other teams who are frustrated as well. And I don't think I've ever seen you that mad in my life, Phil. So
I was pretty ticked
you
when you
were. And
put so much time into it.
mhm. Well,
And
and money
yeah,
too. Like it's
yeah,
not even just the time, but it's the money, it's the investment, it's coming up, it's the amount of time that we hyped up the event as well. We had people who did the event for the first time because of our recommendation on the podcast, and that's hard. That's really frustrating because we I remember there were guys next to us that said, you guys are the podcast guys." Like, hey, look at us go. And that was cool. And like, this better be as good as you promised. I'm like, it should be. And at the end of it, we kind of just looked at each other and we're like, so that was it. We could
yeah,
just tell like it was just rough. But all that to say, the Wolverine 5K, that's something that we are thankful for our time with, but we'll see what happens in the future with it. I guess I'll kind of keep that open ended there.
yep.
So,
I would agree with that. That's where I'm at with that specific competition going forward.
mhm.
So
But and then when it comes to the Zombie Invitational, I agree. That was probably I can see why you, Kyle, Brett, and Daryl were have been hyping up this competition for as long as you guys have. The shotgun sucks, and it sounds like a lot of people will be either borrowing your shotgun or Brent's shotgun now because you guys all have semi-auto shotguns. Phil's
yeah,
got basically an AK style semi-auto shotgun, and Brent now has an AR clone, uh, AR based shotgun as well, and we've it ran great just last Saturday, or yeah, for at the time of recording last Saturday, we all went to the range with Brent, with all the guys, and Brent brought his new AR style shotgun. And I think we put about 200 rounds through it with no. I think the first like 5 or 6 were some issues because we're still
yep,
breaking it in. And then by the time we got to about 210 rounds, that's when I think it got so gunked up after shooting literally 200 rounds within like 30 minutes that it was like you could tell I was like I need a break. So
yeah,
I think it's just got all gunked up, overused. I get it, but the fact
yep,
that it went basically 200 rounds with no issues, I'd say it's pretty within a literal 20-minute time frame. That's amazing. So I'd be pretty happy with
yeah.
that with a semi shotgun.
We had the thing pretty well heated up. And a lot of things with
Oh, I
semi-automatic
burned my
shotgun.
hand.
Yeah, with semi-automatic shotguns, especially mag fed, it is your like time between cleaning in order to make it run again properly
Hmm.
is not great. Like I think I
No.
ran the Mossberg 930. That one I think had maybe 500-ish rounds on it before cleaning, and that was probably about 100 rounds over than it should have been. Right. So some guns run better just based on the systems. I'll be curious with his going forward what it's going to take. I know with my AK shotgun, it continued to run just fine, but when I went to remove the gas system, it was really well carbon locked, and that was about 300, 350 rounds on
Hmm.
that. So just kind of knowing what your gun can handle and how to handle that. So I'll be curious for next year. I have no problem letting other people shooting that going forward. Now I know how it runs, so it's something that we could trade for the next competition. But yeah, with the Zombie Invitational, it sometimes I'm guilty of overhyping things, and I got to be really careful with that. And I'm really generally pretty open about sharing stuff to the point where it's like you're getting a lot of information. You're probably not going to remember a lot of it, but the match I think over over delivered on what was expected.
Yeah.
They had a few less people this year than they had in the years past due to the election year. There's a lot of people that work for three-letter agencies or different military branches that were, because it's so close to the election, that were unable to make it. So one thing
Hmm.
I'm really appreciative of the match director that he did was traditionally they would do 6 courses of fire on day one and then 5 on day 2. But because he knew we had less people, he added instead of just being like, well, oh well, too bad. He actually made it more fun for the people who did show and added a seventh course of fire on rifle day, which again is fantastic. There's no requirement for doing it, like for him to do that. I wasn't expecting it. Nobody else was expecting it. But the fact that he added that additional level of value, for going out, because it's in West Virginia, we're out of Michigan, so it's a drive to get there. But just adding that extra level of value, and then again, it's really hard to time stages. It's hard to time people in and out. And obviously, that no matches without any kind of challenges that you have to work through. But in general, I think he did a really good job with running that match and with the stages that were presented in that match.
I agree. No, once again, I had a blast with the event. I'll admit I had some struggles on day two of shotgun day because it's something that I don't really train with much. I decided to just fall back on my fundamentals and it worked. Overall, my fundamentals is the reason why I did okay, but I could definitely tell there are definitely some deficiencies in my training where something as simple as not being in having to swim out of my sling or because my sling was too tight. So to the point where I actually have a scar on my face because there's one stage where I actually cut my face open because my sling was so tight on my face that either my sling or the shotgun itself was actually literally scratched my face and my face was bleeding to where now I have a scar on my cheek right here because of it. Because I
Dang.
wasn't practicing with. Yeah, exactly. It's funny. I was wondering, like, it healed up, but it's funny. Like, I have a scar on my face because, ow, actually, it's kind of tender right there. That's weird, but oh well.
Yeah.
And
Chicks take scars. So
I don't know. She hasn't said anything about it, but whatever. But but all that to say, Zombie Invitational was an awesome time. I know there are definitely there were overall, I had a good time. I think there are definitely some learning experiences with the event as well. And end of the day, I look forward to doing it again. And we're gonna have to figure out how we're gonna get 10 guys down to the event now, apparently.
yeah, there was definitely a lot of FOMO that was created out of that match. I think even from the year that like Kyle, Brent, and Daryl, and I guess myself went between that year and then the year following, we had a lot more people. Like I should say a lot more. I guess was it two more, three more people that came with us, and then everyone hearing about it from the squad, the USPSA squad. Now they all want to go as well too. People from the other Wolverine 5K team have heard about it. Now they've got firsthand experience or secondhand experience from the people that they work with that said, "Hey, it's really fun. You should go next year." So we'll definitely bring in more people. One thing that I really appreciate was the match director said, "Hey, you guys are coming from a long distance. If you want to come in the night before, just to make it so that's easier on you guys to be able to recuperate to get back in, you guys are more than welcome to stay. I'm sure we'll probably get put to work, which is fine." But that kind of stuff is not expected, but is really nice from a match director to be that like, hey, how can I make your experience better?
For sure.
Right. I really appreciate that, and that's one thing that Brett and Daryl do when they run our USPSA shooting as well. I think just in general at South Kent Sportsman's Club, all the people that run the matches do a really good job of trying to make the experience better for the individuals that are there. And in the end, I think that makes people want to come back and makes people bring other individuals, which again makes them want to continue to run the match, right?
I agree, which is crazy because I even look at our local club, how I think we're averaging like 80 shooters now for USPSA.
Yeah,
Aren't we
it's
like,
we are the most attended USPSA club in Michigan, which is
that,
crazy
that's
because we're on the
insane.
west side of the state, not the east side of the state.
Hmm.
For those who don't know, Grand Rapids, Michigan is the major metropolitan area out of the west side of the state. You may or may not have heard of that city, but then everyone knows of Detroit, right?
Hmm.
And that's on the east side, and maybe there's more clubs on that side, but for whatever reason, they're just not as well attended as our matches.
Well, I think Brent and Daryl also do such a great job at it.
Yeah,
And of course, you've got the word of mouth because we have many guys who do the event to where they're members. And of course, we have a lot of people who are not members because they're friends of members or have heard of the club or have done the match in the past. Because a lot of it really is word of mouth. There's really no marketing that I know of that they do.
yeah. We even had the Hillsdale College
Yeah, that's
shooting
right.
team show up at one of the matches, and they were actually looking to host USPSA matches at the college because they have a shooting range there, so they can do so. And they were looking to find out, hey, how is a match that is well run? How does that look? I don't know if they compared it to the other matches, but how does that look, right? And how do I build up a match so
Hmm.
that it runs as well around like our matches going forward that they wanted to run, or their matches that they wanted to run down at Hillsdale. And by the way, good on them. I think they won like the inaugural season of like shooting sports for colleges. I think they took first place. I don't know
Oh,
how many
wow.
other
Good for
colleges
them.
there are, but
Like
for those of you who don't
three.
know, Hillsdale is a private conservative college that is based out of Michigan
Hmm.
that can have a shooting range on their property because they're
Hmm.
a private university.
Hey, you hear that, Hillsdale College?
Please
Sponsor
sponsor
us.
us.
You guys just sponsor Warrior Poet Society. I know
I know. That's what I'm
we're
saying.
we're we're a little smaller than them, but sponsor us too.
I just
Okay,
want
we're a
one of their
lot smaller
jerseys.
than them.
Their jerseys were fantastic. Whoever designed it did a fantastic job. I don't know if they took from like other jerseys that they have for other sports teams, but they
Hmm.
were like a nice blue color, like blue on blue, and really well set up. I actually asked one of the guys. I was like, "Hey, how do I get one of your jerseys? Like, even if it says like sponsor of, or fan of, or whatever.
Yeah,
Maybe if we sponsor them, they'll hook us up with some jerseys.
we don't have that kind of money.
We don't have that kind of money. Maybe someday.
We definitely do not have that kind of money, but it's all right. But either way, I guess all that to say, competition wise, I look back and we have USPSA, we have this USPSA sectional, Zombie Invitational, Wolverine 5K. We definitely had our ups and downs. I definitely could see areas of improvement. I know for me is kind of what I mentioned, dry firing more and having to, in my words, I like to slow down. Our buddy Paul, who also is a great shooter in his own right, he's probably, he's a very fast shooter. I'd
Hmm.
say that he's faster than I am in some areas. But one thing that I know he will admit is he does not control his recoil as well. So because of that, he's so fast, but because he doesn't control his recoil well, I say he needs to slow down. What he likes to say is, no, I just need to find my dot better. I'm like, or slow down. But either way, it's whether however you want to say it, either slow down, find your dot, control your recoil better. I just want to be able to just be smoother and be more methodical, I guess, with my movements. So this way it's not just trying to push it to the metal, trying to get to that 120%. When I was like, maybe let's try 80 to 90. Something that's very manageable, more maybe orange, like yellow orange, maybe not just red, to where I'm like, what am I doing? So that's kind of the goal.
Yeah. It's funny because I want to actually do a little bit of the opposite. I noticed a few things that after watching, right now we're in the process of putting a match video together for the Zombie Invitational.
Hmm.
So I was watching a lot of that footage and watching a lot of my footage and realizing that my personal efficiency of movement is not great. And I have the advantage of being tall. Now, that is
Hmm.
moving a significant amount more mass, but I think what I need to do is figure out how to be a little bit more efficient with my movement. Obviously, my draws, it might be a lot better. My sight picture could be improved a lot. But one area where I really know that I need to make improvement on is getting in and out of positions a lot quicker and not
Yep.
dwelling on something, like taking those shots, then moving on, figuring out how my body works differently than other people I shoot with,
Hmm.
and kind of trying to figure what that looks like. And I actually started looking a little bit at watching Nils Johannesson's videos. He's really tall, and trying to figure out like how is his movements, how do they vary versus somebody like a JJ Rakaza, who's a little bit shorter, and not obviously everyone's different. So I'm not trying to model myself after him, but also trying to realize that that's somebody else out there who is doing things at a 1% level, being like top tier 1%. And how do I learn from that, and how do I make my movements more efficient in and out of positions,
Hmm.
and dwelling and having less dwell time between spots, right?
Yeah.
So that's something that I want to work on for sure when it comes to competition. One other thing I kind of forgot to mention is, I know you didn't have a chance to do that just due to your work schedule, but a bunch of us did start shooting three gun in preparation
Yeah.
for the Zombie Invitational this year. I bring it up because, again, I want to use another example of fantastic match direction. Hagen, who shoots USPSA with us at South Kent, he runs that with a couple other guys, and he's of the same opinion too. He's very much like a hard kind of guy, like former military. Like, you talk to him, you're worried if like he's gonna go off on you. Is like your initial impression, but when you get to know him, he's
Yeah.
there to make sure that, number one, everyone's safe, which is always
Hmm.
talk about is important. But when shooting with him in a match, he would ask for input. Like, hey, was this a good stage? Did you guys have a good time? Because this is the first time you've gone. And he's made changes now where if you want to shoot the match without a shotgun and shoot it two gun instead of three gun, he's looking at the writing on the wall and saying that there are a lot of people out there that want to shoot two gun matches. They don't necessarily want to shoot a shotgun because it's not an area that they're strong in. Tyler's pointing at himself. We're on video now, so I can tell that.
I know it's great. I
A,
can't hide anymore.
I know, right?
I actually have to look like I'm paying attention now.
Yeah.
I'm like half kidding.
Yeah. Anyway, to wrap that up, and I guess probably to wrap up the competition stuff too, is um, again, I always appreciate people that are looking forward and not just settling back with the way that they're going to handle and run competitions. And one thing that has not been announced yet, and I won't really talk about, but I know that Britt and Daryl are talking a lot about the way that they're going to handle matches going in the future. So keep your eye out for that. We'll talk more. We'll actually bring them in a lot as that kind of process is like fleshed out. With that, I'll kind of end next. I don't want to give anything away, but so I guess, Tyler, what's our next kind of area moving on? What's our next area that you want to talk about in like the highlights of 2024? Obviously, competition is a huge part of it.
It
That's why I
is.
want to get into that and like, really dig in and try not to reiterate too much stuff we've had in the past, but competition isn't everything. There's a bunch of other
Hmm.
things that we've done this year within shooting.
Well, let's talk about the podcast itself. I think
Yeah.
that's something that this was a goal that we've talked about, and it's not even, and that's the thing, like, that not the podcast itself, but it's, I guess, content creation, as more along the lines of sharing with our listeners and sharing with our community who we are and sharing our passions of what it means to be a good man, what it means to be a good shooter, to be a good protector, to be a provider. And also, with the name itself, acceptable accuracy, the idea has always been that the enemy of good is perfect.
Mm,
And that's really the whole idea behind acceptable accuracy, that yes, do we want to do things with excellence? 100%. Of course we do. But the idea of acceptable accuracy is sometimes it's okay to get something that's like a B or an 80% versus trying to, because going from like an 80 to a 90 or even a 90 to a 100 could literally mean years of work or months or weeks
right.
or days or hours or however you want to look at it. But there's a lot of times, sometimes it's okay to be good enough, because I think we live in an age where it's so easy for us to compare ourselves, compare our own inadequacies with someone else's spotlight. And because of that, we tend to kind of be really hard on ourselves and become perfectionists, or try to really be down on ourselves, or try to be kind of all of that. And so all that to say, we've really been excited and have been in the talks for a long time about how are we going to share, I guess, our friendship and our goals and our values and our passions with the community. And eventually at the beginning of 2024, we decided let's do a podcast because we've talked about YouTube, we talked about social media. And it's like, let's do a podcast because that's something that is much more manageable. It's something that we can talk about. It's something we can do long form. And also we can kind of expand our influence from there. So it's just really cool to kind of see day one to whatever day or episode we're on now. What episode are we on, by the way?
Uh, Assuming this makes it out in the correct order, this will actually be episode number 40.
I was actually wondering, I was like, is this episode 40?
Yeah, or actually, it'll be 40 or 39. It depends on the order of when we
Mm-hmm.
release this. So,
Either
but
way.
yeah, this is our 40th recording. We have a previous episode we have recorded, we have not released yet.
Mm-hmm.
But
And our goal is to eventually get like 5 on retainer.
yes.
That's
Yeah,
my
I think
goal. That's my goal, at least.
yeah, and as the listeners probably noticed, we've gone to more of an every other week release schedule because it's a bit more realistic than trying to do every week, right? We may have episodes here and there. We'll do 3 a month, but I think for the most part, it'll end up being every other week from a schedule perspective, and that seems to be very, very manageable. We've found a lot of tools that tend to work really well for us. The editing doesn't take overly long. Recording isn't too bad. We've got a good group of individuals that we can pull on to bring into podcasts like within like a few days notice, which has been really good.
It's been really nice to
Yeah.
have. But
For
I definitely want to be a little better on just that planning aspect as well. Because I'm not much of a planner. Phil knows this. I am definitely more of like, let's just do it now. But I do know I have to find that good balance between the two. And I'd love to get other guests on the channel as well. And there are a couple that we're working on right now. There are 3 in my head right now that I'm thinking of that I'm trying to get. One actually did reach out to us. They're a smaller company on somewhere else in the country, and I don't want to say their name because in case we don't get them, but we're trying to do an episode with them. And there was another person where I have already DM'd in the past, and they said that they wanted to do an episode with us, but that kind of fell through the cracks. So I'm going to reach out to them again. And there's another guy, another famous guy who actually follows me for some reason. I have no idea why. And I will reach out to him and be like, hey, bro, let's talk about long range stuff because he very much is an expert on that subject.
yeah, I would love to have them on. We'll have to bring in some other people that are a little bit more experienced in that to be able to like get the most out of that episode. But now you're looking a little bit behind the curtain. Anytime we don't know something super well, we'll typically bring people in, right? Which was
Mm-hmm.
intentional from the start. Again, it's a lot of that acceptable accuracy attitude where we know that there's areas that we're not going to be strong in, but we know people that have strengths in those areas, and we do bring them in intentionally to have conversations with them around that stuff. But I want to step back on the content creation thing. A lot of people, back to your comment about the perfect is a enemy of the good or the great.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people have all these ideas in their head and they don't execute on them because there's too many things that are in the way.
Yes.
And I look back on our original episodes that we have, and for me, a lot of the improvement was to be able to speak better without saying like this and whatever. Right? I still do some of that, and that's going to obviously take time. But I think when you have the ability to look at the podcast from multiple angles of trying to do self improvement, not just creating the podcast, but having the podcast, obviously, so putting content creation out, being educational for other individuals, but also working on your personal presence. I am constantly on camera or voice call or whatever it may be for work. And I know that this will help me professionally if I can get better at being a clearer talker, which is also something I'm trying to work on, not using filler words as well too, and then also trying to create pauses within the stuff that I talk about, not going back to correct myself when I make a mistake. Those kind of things
Mm-hmm.
are personal goals. So when I start stacking those things on, having personal goals for me, that makes doing something like this on a regular basis a lot easier because it does improve a lot of different areas of my life, right? And I don't know if you get that out of this or not, Tyler, or if like you have other ulterior motives for doing this podcast, or you just want to
I
do it
don't think you
because
realize
I
how
asked
compartmentalized my brain is. Everything is in compartments. I'm like,
you.
here's my AA compartment.
Yeah,
Bam. That's about it.
that's
But
fair.
no.
I
Mhm.
do honestly struggle sometimes when like I get too many compartments. I try to overflow them into other areas. And Tyler
Mhm.
knows this. I'm a fairly forgetful person. So I will randomly forget stuff, or I'll do things like, "Hey Tyler, do you remember that one time frame I was supposed to like edit, or what was wrong with this episode that I need to go back and edit?" And you'll literally pull up my quote, and I know it's in there. I know it's in our chat, and I feel bad about it sometimes. But I'm also like, okay, well, I am the one doing the editing on this, so I can at least ask for help. And I think that's a
Which
big part.
and
Sometimes I
that's
struggle
perfectly
with,
fine,
yeah.
and that's why we're here. That's something that I struggle with as well, as always, is asking for help, that I've gotten called out on a lot recently, because I'm it's so easy. I've been called Atlas at times by those who know me very well, because
Mm,
I'm just trying to hold up the world on my own, trying to carry the world on my back, when in reality that's something that I have chosen to do, when I literally have a team of people surrounding me who want to help, but I need to make the decision to spread it out, to hand off the world, to be like, hey, you can take the US, you can take Russia, you can take, I don't know why I'm saying countries, but you see what I mean? Like,
they're
I
parts of
don't
the
need to,
world. Yeah.
exactly, I don't need to carry the world on my own. I can spread it out because I have a team. And some of them are literally twiddling their thumbs, thinking, like, how can
Yeah.
I help?
Give me something.
Give me some. And
Yeah.
it's
And I
learning how
guess
to be a
that's
better leader, you know? So that's on me.
and I guess it's a great call out too to the fact that we've had so many guests and repeat guests on the Acceptable Accuracy podcast. I had personally hoped that would be the direction that we would go and that people would want to come back, right?
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people I think of like Kyle and Brett and Daryl have been repeated guests on the podcast, right? And have sacrificed their time to jump in and to help with, drive content with the podcast, create knowledge for individuals to listen in on. And honestly, it usually makes for some really great episodes, right? And we try to keep things fresh because
Hmm.
as much as Tyler and I like to talk together and do these podcasts, it is refreshing to have other people come in with their insights to have those conversations. And I am truly thankful for those individuals who have stepped up and helped out with and made Acceptable Accuracy the podcast that it is over the last year, right? And that will continue to go forward. We'll continue to have those guests back. Like Tyler said, there's guests that he wants to have on, and that's kind of something that I know is close to him. There's a group of individuals on a YouTube channel that just popped up that are very similar to the way that we are, and they're starting to grow on that journey, but through the YouTube perspective. And my goal is to get them on the podcast as well. I haven't really even talked to Tyler about it because I
I
just
have
stumbled across
no
their.
idea what
Yep.
you're talking about. I'm like, I don't
Again,
even know
this
what
was
you're talking about.
intentional because I wanted to have content to talk about. But
Yeah.
this group of individuals are so new into that. And I think they're very much in the same wavelength that we are with our shooting friends. I think the two would line up really well and be able to cross pollinate that content kind of as we match with them on the trajectory of increasing the amount of the amount
Hmm.
of content that we've generated, right? And having
Yeah.
increasing the social network when it comes to, again, firearms, digital content.
No, that makes a lot of sense. So, but all that to say, with the podcast, I know a couple of things I guess to kind of reflect on is we're trying to figure out. Actually, behind the scenes, I think I know Phil remembers this. There was one episode where it was him and I and two other guys for an episode where we actually recorded together, because it was very early on, and Phil gave me permission to hit him in the leg with my pen, with my glass breaker pen. It didn't hit him hard, but every time he said
Yeah.
or
Yep.
like, he gave
Yep.
me permission to literally stab his leg.
Yeah. It hurt, but I tell
It
you, it
did.
helped. And I
I
still think
know.
about that to this day.
Hmm.
Because again, we owe it to ourselves and to those who are listening to be able to have something that is listenable, right?
Yes,
Like obviously people love listening to themselves, but it's asking a lot to get our audience to listen to us. And as such, improving our craft is important.
I agree. I 100% agree. So all that to say, we've definitely come a long way. A year later, I even think those early episodes with, like, I think of Brian, how we were recording together, we were utilizing some other equipment, and it's really cool. Now we've transitioned to now doing everything more digital, so we don't need to. I mean, it's fun doing it all together, but that's a lot to coordinate, especially with
Right.
multiple people, especially with our guests when they're like an hour away, or if we start doing these guest interviews of people across the country, there's no way. So it's really cool to see where we're at now. Of course, as we've increased some of our other, I guess, equipment, our gear. For I think I've got new cameras now. I know you've got new. I'm
Yeah,
sorry. Yeah,
microphone.
I'm using my now that we're doing videos. I'm using my Insta 360 Go as my camera to kind of try it out. It kind of gives an interesting fish lens, so I'm gonna have to figure out how to fix that.
It's
But
honestly it's not that bad. It looks pretty good.
no, and I'm being, of course, I'm gonna be nitpicking, but of course, using microphones, I've got the Rode wireless mics now. I know you've got an actual microphone for your. Do you use that for work as well?
I do actually have a
Which
splitter, or a
nice.
KVM is what we call it in
So,
the business, where I
so
can
work
bounce between
expense,
my
huh?
work. No, this one I
Ah,
own.
I know.
I
I'm kidding.
Yeah, I'm very careful to separate work with
I
like
get it.
personal stuff. I do use personal stuff for work, but it's like it's not items that are obviously any kind of security risk or whatever. But it's just a
Oh, of
microphone.
course.
The quality is better,
Hmm.
which again something that I wanted to do with the podcast was improve that quality to make a personal investment
Hmm.
into again the product that we create because it's really what it is. You know, even if it's just an educational product or whatever, it's something that we find value. We hope everyone else finds value in as well too.
I get it. So I guess speaking of gear, why don't we talk about that? Why don't we quickly talk about that, and then why don't we conclude? What are some new gear that you've made, some purchases, I guess, for your gear?
Yeah. So in 2024, looking back, there were some significant investments. Again, people love gear. I love gear. I love trying new things. I think being part of on a podcast, it's always good to have individuals who are very consistent because then you have like Tyler is very much more consistent when it comes to gear, but having that consistent take. But then I want to be say, hey, we are working with newer concepts, things as they pop up. Does it work? Doesn't it work? And obviously there's an investment there, but it's fun, right? So my biggest change this year was for 3 gun and then for the Zombie Invitational was investing in a mag-fed shotgun. Did a ton of research on it. There's not a lot of brands left today. You can't buy a Sega new anymore unless somebody
Hmm.
finds one in a warehouse somewhere.
Yeah.
Um, so from a mag-fed shotgun perspective, there's not a lot out there. I ended up going with a Lynx, which is a clone of the Sega and imported from China. Unfortunately, you can't get those anymore either. But there's a lot of support for it out there. I've never owned an AK platform before, so there was a little bit of a learning curve when it came from that. Realizing that when you buy an AR-15, you can bolt on whatever you want and it's going to work, right? Whereas if you have an AK, there's probably going to be some filing involved, or some visits to the hardware store to get the right length screws because the platform is not as standardized as it is from like an AR platform, right? Even
Yeah.
1911s have some pretty good compatibility. There's some filing that needs to be done from like a 1911 perspective. It's an older platform, right? But that was the biggest change. I with that I got in different gear that need to support that from a competition perspective. So from like a traditional club match 3 gun perspective, I got a magazine holster that because obviously the mags are huge because they're holding 12 gauge shotgun shells. I got that, and then I got a chest rig to support that as well for the Zombie Invitational that requires a little bit more carrying of like 'cause you carry all your ammo from stage to stage. So that was kind of the biggest purchase this year. Something that Tyler doesn't know about either. I just bought a 13.7-inch pinned and welded upper so that I
Nice.
could have a 16-inch total overall upper to be able to go to matches where, like, if I had a last minute leave the state, I wouldn't have to necessarily file the paperwork to take my SBR with me that I usually take. I wanted something that was lightweight, that was a little bit shorter, that could be used to maneuver in and out of vehicles. I wanted something that was direct impingement, which is what I got, but I
Hmm.
also wanted adjustable gas block that was also threaded for um, my suppressor in case I wanted to run that. So I was able to find that all. One thing I will say, I don't think people do much anymore, but people will poo poo on Palmetto State Armory a little bit. They think that it's like, entry tier stuff, which they definitely have some, but it definitely lasts, which is shown by the fact that a lot of people we know shoot it in competition. But they have their Saber line and they are truly, really innovative. Like getting all of those things in a upper without having to put a custom order in is pretty rare. where Palmetto State's like, hey, we can do all that for you and give you a product, hand it to you, and now you have it, right? So I did go with a Palmetto State upper receiver. I did their new locking hand guard just because it is a little bit removed even more weight off of it. But as we'll go into goals in the future here for 2025, I'll kind of dig into why I did that. But those are my major equipment changes. I know Tyler probably wants to talk a little bit about the red dot epiphany that we came across. So I'll hand it over to you and let you talk about your two red dot epiphanies that you had this year from both a pistol and a rifle perspective.
Yeah, so we'll go ahead and talk about the changes that I've made as well. So before I even talk about that, because that's probably the thing that I'll be talking about primarily, but I did go ahead and equipment wise, I bought some more mags, because I kind of transitioned. I got those 19 round Glock 19X mags because they're fairly good price. These are something that I can conceal carry with and also use for competitions. People are like, why don't you go ahead and do the 21 rounders? I'm like, I just don't, or get mag extensions. I'm like, because they're expensive, man. Like I like USPSA, but I'm not gonna. I might conceal carry those, but I don't really know for sure. But also, I know people kind of talk about the PMags. They're fine. It's just I think I bought 6 of them a couple years ago, but there was like 2 that I have marks, but I can't remember which ones they are. Just do not work for me, and I don't feel like going through trying to figure out which ones they are. So that's probably why I haven't really used them, and I've never had any issues with OEM Glock mags. So that's kind of what I did this year, mag wise. I know also Phil got me a Christmas present this year of a P mag that he was able to get laser engraved. Now I actually have a mag pod coming in for Gen 2s, basically another version of like a Ranger plate, just another base
Oh,
pad. Yeah. So yeah, that's coming in tomorrow. So
nice.
see how that goes. So apparently those work really well for like hard surfaces. So we'll see how that goes. I'll show it to you later next time. So that's coming in on Saturday.
Nice.
And then I got a chest rig. I got that primarily for the Zombie Invitational. It was great. So that's why I want to wear a plate carrier because I do know I know not this isn't the main reason, but I know that's one reason why Brent and Daryl they wear their plate carriers because they have HRT everything. So I got an HRT chest rig, so this way I don't have to wear a plate carrier, and I'm really glad it didn't because it's heavy and I don't feel like it. I know I'm the youngest of the group, but I really don't care. So, and then what else did I get? And the big change this year, I think for all of us is, or at least for Phil and I, is I don't know if those listening or watching, we had an episode on LPVO versus Red Dot Magnifier, and both Phil and I were very back and forth. But at the time of the recording of that episode, both Phil and I were using an LPVO. We have officially switched back to Red Dot Magnifier. We did it. We were the bit for me at least. There are 2 main reasons why I did LPVO. One, I was scared of an EMP, and with an etched reticle, I would be fine. But if an EMP happens, I have bigger problems than that. 2,
Yeah.
exactly.
I think you could always swap the LPVO back in if you had to, right? You still have
Yeah.
it. You own it. And with pick rails, you're at least get close to being like within a man-sized target, right?
But and also too, when we did the Marsoc drill for the first time, we were noticing that our site acquisition wasn't there. We were slower. We're going low, and we just decided, you know what, let's try out Red Dot Magnifier, and we did it. And I'll be honest, I am loving it. But I am loving doing a
Yes.
Red Dot Magnifier now. Phil actually decides to get a high rise mount, you jerk, and now he has a 193 for both his Red Dot and his magnifier. But
Yeah. Out of the Zombie Invitational, day one with rifle pistol, my pistol shooting was exactly what I hoped it would be.
mhm.
It was, fairly accurate and fast enough for me. Like at Zombie, the targets are small for pistol, right?
Oh yeah.
Typically, some of them are bigger, but that went really well. But my rifle shooting was not great. I was having issues getting behind the glass fast enough. And again, training, could be training. It definitely is training. But for that kind of competition, I feel like having a red dot would have been a huge difference. And I can actually put that up against. So day one, I ran LPVO on my rifle. And then day two, I ran a red dot on my shotgun. Obviously, 2 different platforms, They are both they're a rifle type platform versus like a traditional shotgun because my shotgun's got a grip and a magazine, right? And obviously the recoil is a little bit different. But my day two with a red dot went way better than day one with an LPVO. And
Hmm.
I have shot a ton of red dot in competition for USPSA, so maybe that's why. But I look forward to shooting the red dot in 3 gun next year, and then I did get a new magnifier. I got a 5x magnifier. There with zombie, there is shooting that goes out to 500, 600. For me, 5, 6x is enough to be able to get out there. And again, if you look at most of the shooting that you're doing in a match like that, you're out to like 100. And I would say 100 with a man-sized target, a red dot is going to be superior all day long than is going to be at 1x on a magnifier.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. So, and I know for me too, previously I had a 1 to 6 LPVO, and really I was either 1X or 6X. It was
Right.
very rare for me to be in the middle anyway. So at the moment I have a 3X magnifier, but I probably will eventually get a 6X Holosun when it comes out. So that is my plan. I am also planning on doing a high rise mount as well. I think mine's like a 163 or whatever it is. So I know Phil's doing a 193, but I actually am planning on going even higher. I think I'm going to do the 210 or 203 or
Two two
whatever it is.
was it 226 226? I
It
forget.
is
223
226 or whatever
or
it
two
is.
three or something like
It'll
yeah.
be great.
I should know, but I'm so old school. The original like red dots I was shooting, like they were usually what they'd call 1/3 co-witness,
Mhm.
where if you had iron sights on your gun, it was just like the iron sight would be the lower 1/3 of your optic.
Yep.
But now people are getting them with like the super high rise, where you can actually run a iron sight below the optic itself
I
as a
know it's
backup,
crazy.
which is pretty crazy. And I guess it's nice. Yeah, I'll be curious how that runs for you, Tyler. I think you'll be just fine. I think I went a little bit lower just because my concern was getting too high height off a bore, height over bore. Because I have a Scorpion that I use that I have shot in USPSA. It's a SBR, and with that one, the barrel sits lower in the gun just because the way it's set up versus an AR. And I've had issues getting like good sight picture around barricades. Now,
Mhm.
Zombie doesn't have that much of a restriction as like a USPSA match would, if we're using that as our basis for why we're doing things. But I think you'll be fine with the 226 or 223, whatever it is.
Whatever it is.
Plus, you'll be able to tuck your optic down instead
It's
of
true.
over, which I know aesthetically is very pleasing for you.
It's not even just aesthetic. I even think practical in terms of storage. That is one thing because my goal too is because I have not gotten a weapon mounted light on my gun yet, and a part of it too is because I'm very back and forth on how I want to do that. Because I don't like the fact that, of course, with a weapon mounted light on an AR, it's going to be on either the left or right side of your gun, and it just sticks out. I'd rather just keep everything very vertical, I guess. So I've considered, I forgot what it's called, but I know Streamlight has one where you can mount it on the pick rail at the top. And so also by doing so, it does make it ambi. So that's kind of why I'm really back and forth about it. I might use that so this way anyone can use my gun now. All I gotta do is just switch to slings, I guess. So
Right.
there are a couple reasons behind it. More, and one of that is definitely with the dot. Now the magnifier is always going to be in the middle no matter what. So
Right.
that is definitely part of the reason. And so also part two when it comes to gear with Red Dot is I no longer am using my Holosun 507C ACSS. I now have a Holosun EPS on my carry gun. I finally went to the closed emitter after talking about it for I don't know, probably over a year now. I finally made the switch and I love it. It's just a dot by itself. There's no big circle on the outside. My battery isn't dying after 25 days. It's been nice. It's been really nice.
Yeah, and I think to the point that you made, which is a really good point, was when people first started putting red dots on rifles, they were not closed emitter.
Mhm.
But now, pretty much every red dot you're going to get, unless you're super hyper focused on competition, is going to have an enclosed emitter in it because
Exactly.
of the durability that you're going to have along with it, right?
Yep.
So I can see the value. It does make it a little bit bulkier, obviously, because you're looking at like a little bit longer of an optic, platform itself, and now you've got the potential. I guess you're going to have it anyway. A front and back glass getting scratched up, right? But I don't know. Holosun's got a pretty good return policy. I've used it personally because I actually had a red dot die on me from them that I sent off and they got back to me. So worst case, you put your old one back on while you're waiting for it to come back. But
Yeah.
I do believe things are going to go that direction. I think the technology will continue to improve. Some of the original enclosed emitters were massive. I think of like the Aimpoint Acro, which literally looks like a
It
mailbox.
really does.
The Holosun is considerably smaller than I think I know it's smaller than the Acro. So
Well,
it's getting there. It's
yeah.
getting to the point now where it's starting to make a lot more sense to go with an enclosed emitter within your pistol.
Yeah. Well, that's why Hollison came out with because their original enclosed emitter was the 508T, I believe, and it was much bigger. It probably was about the same size as the Acro, but now they came out with the EPS and it's significantly smaller, and they have the EPS carry, which you would use for a more micro compact gun like a M&P Shield Plus or like a P365 because it's thinner. So, and it all uses the K footprint. And it's on my Shadow Systems now. And like I said, I've loved it. And now, literally, every time I go home, all I gotta do is wipe, clean. I'm good to go. I don't
Yeah,
have to worry about going in with a Q-tip, going inside, cleaning out the emitter, hoping there's no dust or rain or sweat in there. Literally, I take my holster off, I look at my dot, I'm like, oh, cool. Get a microfiber cloth, wipe, done, clean, good to go.
yeah. From that perspective, especially from somebody who can carry like yourself, who can carry your job all day long, like that
Hmm.
makes a lot of sense, right? Like I'm at home working from home, and then I go visit like with my day job. I don't carry when I go visit people because I don't know what their policies are. Plus, I
Hmm.
don't lose my job, so I just don't mess with it, right? So that makes it like for somebody like yourself who's always carrying makes a lot of sense,
Oh yeah, it's crazy. It's funny. I talk to people, and like they ask me how often do I carry. I tell them, when am I not carrying?
right?
It is extremely rare for me. If I'm outside my home, I'm pretty much carrying everywhere I am. So,
Right.
mhm. It's funny because
Um,
I have joked about saying, "Man, I wonder if I can become like a police chaplain, somehow find a way to get the
yeah,
Leo, get the Leo law applied to me, so I could carry in every state wherever I could. That'd be nice."
right.
Granted, Trump has said that he wants to sign a universal reciprocity bill. So we'll see what that means and what that looks like. And I do know some people who actually are against it because they're afraid that by if the federal government
Right.
can overtake state gun laws, what can that mean now? Can let's say once Trump is out of the office, can they take that away now and make it even worse?
Right.
Or can states just make the laws so dumb to where like, yeah, you can carry, but now it's just much harder because they're making something else more expensive or whatever it is. So
Yeah, I think the federal law would have to be written in such a way that it basically says that the state law trumps the federal law, which I don't know if there's a way to do that. But my concern is that they're not going to write it well because laws are not necessarily written by the people that understand the subject the best. So there's always
mhm,
that risk of it getting messed up. To Tyler's point.
yeah. So
Um, so kind of looking forward to 2025 then from a gear perspective, Tyler, are there any changes that you're looking to make going into 2025 or anything that you want to get to that you've been building up over time? I know you're looking at, like I said, the magnifier, 6x magnifier versus a 3x magnifier. But is there anything else specifically that you have in mind, like a mag fed shotgun?
no.
No, that's
It's
fine.
really hard for me to invest in something like that I'm only going to use for one competition. I think that's really hard for me, especially if I can borrow other people's, which I still have yours, by the way. Thank you.
That's totally fine.
I
Yeah,
know. I tried returning it and you wouldn't let me return
I
it.
would. Yeah, I took the dot off it though.
Yeah,
I
exactly. So now it actually is. Well, it's not useless for me. I can still. The main thing is reloading with it. That actually was what I need to practice
right.
more. Reloading and shouldering it. That's what I need to practice more with it. So, but and then of course, it's that long stock, man. Maybe I do. Whatever. But either way, of course, there's that aspect. But in terms of new gear, I know I mentioned probably get a 6x magnifier, get a high rise mount. There's that. What else is there? I think those are kind of the probably get a weapon mount light for my AR. I have a new sling. I'm pretty happy with it. So there's to the best of my that's really kind of the main. Probably get a new knife. I'd like to get a new push dagger, something probably smaller, easier to put back in the actual holster instead of accidentally cutting myself because the knife I have now is a great knife, but it is a pain in the butt to put back to sheath again because there's a very specific way you need to put it in, and that is a pain in my butt, literally.
My kids for Christmas this year got me throwing knives.
There you
Like
go.
completely unexpected. Like I it was not on my list, was not on my radar anywhere. And then I was like, man, where am I going to throw these? Now our club actually has boards we can throw them against. So I'm actually going to give it a try. But my son was like, you're going to put those on your belt and use them at the zombie next year. And I was like, I don't know if I can because I don't think I can retain them well enough
Yeah.
to not fall out. So I was like, no, I probably won't end up using them. But they'll be a fun sideshow, if anything, for
Yeah,
sure.
exactly. I know this stage is going to say you need to stab the pumpkin like, yeah, I'm gonna stab it. Boom! Just throw it like a
Yeah,
ninja.
throw it out there.
Just
Yeah,
throw it
that's
like a
right.
ninja.
That's
It
right.
counts. You're throwing it. You're stabbing it.
Yeah,
Kind
absolutely.
of.
From a distance.
Yeah, from a distance, it counts,
Yeah.
right? But I guess
Um.
that for me, that's kind of more basic stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
nothing too crazy. I mean, for me, it's more as I see the need for it, I'm gonna get it. So I think gear. It's not necessarily gear, but I would like to eventually buy a cool fire trainer. So this way,
Yep.
it's more dry
Oh,
fire.
that's gear. Yeah.
I've spoken about that for a little bit. I know Brent and Daryl, they have one and they love it. I would like to get one as well eventually. That is on my list, but I know there are other things that I would like to get as well, not just gun wise. I think for my home, like I've been doing just so many random projects or like renovating or like new decorations with my house that I've been doing. I would like to continue to add to my home gym downstairs. I like to get because I have adjustable dumbbells right now. The one of the reasons why I chose the dumbbells I got is because they actually have expansion packs to where I can actually get it up to
Mm,
100
hmm.
pounds if I need to. That's one of the reasons why I chose what I did. Because right now they go from like 10 to 50, I believe. So, but eventually I can get, like I said, get expansion packs. I can get like an actual like stand for it. So I'd like to get like more attachments for the squat rack that I have down there. So it's just little things like that. I like to kind of slowly add onto. So what about you, Phil?
I've been slowly progressing towards having setup that I can shoot with night vision.
Yeah.
Obviously, night vision being the most expensive part of that purchase, which will end up being the last one, ironically. Because it's funny because I got a cheap Somo gear, like basically it's a Chinese knockoff of the PEC 15. I got that to kind of try out to tinker around with, see if I can make it work. That was kind of that direction. When you shoot suppressed a lot, it helps to. I'm sorry, when you shoot at night, it helps to be suppressed as well. So obviously, have the suppressor, have everything set up I need for that. Going to a red dot, make sure I have a red dot too that would also support shooting uh, with night vision. So you have to be able to have the ability to set it to a night vision modes. Was something that I also have set up, and having the 193 from everything that I've read and watched about has been the desired height for that. I think higher would be fine as well. I don't think going lower you start running into issues. But getting a proper setup for that, I've been struggling with how to figure out how to set that up along with like a laser and a flashlight without making the firearm extremely heavy. I just found it's a Chinese product as well too, but it's called from SMS Laser. It just came out and it's hit the market, and the price is actually really good. And all the reviews coming back are saying that it's holding zero, which is a big thing. There's a few quirks with it, and hopefully they'll release a newer version of it, but we'll see. But SMS Laser makes for shooting night vision. You have to have a few things. One of them, if you're going to shoot with like active aiming, right? You need a IR laser and an IR flashlight. A lot of times, those modules will also have a daytime laser as well that you can zero that laser, the daytime laser, and it's on the same. Like I think it's like coaxial is the term they use, but it's also allows you to zero the your actual like IR laser along with it, or at least get close. But this SMS laser with their HFXC, they actually make a module that has the daylight laser, the IR laser, the IR flashlight, and a daylight flashlight.
Oh
And it's a
wow.
1,000 lumen flashlight. And a lot of people say that if you try to do all of that, you're going to have problems. And it does have a few like issues with it, but it's one of those things where you're also trying to find a full power IR flashlight and laser. And the FDA has got some weird laws, but there's weird ways to get around it if it's imported from China and all this weird stuff. Anyway, this unit is like 90% of the way there that it needs to be in order to have one single unit on your firearm to do everything you would need it to do in both a white light situation and an IR situation.
Hmm.
So I'm seriously considering picking one of those up. I may wait a while just because I've got time to see if they come out with a unit that fixes some of the issues that have shown up with it. But that'll probably be my large purchase for next year. I don't know if I'll get into the night vision at that point. Again, similar to like you, Tyler, like there's a lot of competing expenses. We're trying to do a large family trip this year, and obviously, I'd rather spend money on the family than firearms only I can use, right? But again, going down that route, eventually, getting night vision set up to be able to shoot night vision matches. So that's kind of my plan for this coming year for any gear purchases. But other than that, I'm going to try to slow things down a little bit so I can start saving money up for a night vision setup. Again, I've got the helmet, I got the ear pro, I got everything I need other than the night vision at this point.
That's awesome. Good for you, man.
But anyways, I know we're going a little long on this episode, and I think that's okay because there's a lot of stuff to cover, and I think it's all fairly interesting things. Um, and maybe Tyler, was there one more thing or specific thing that you're looking for, whether it's a competition or something that you want, a goal that you have for this year yet that doesn't necessarily fit in one of the categories that we've already touched on, and this year being 2025?
I think we really already touched on a lot. Kind of like you said, content wise, we already touched on a lot. Those are
Mm-hmm.
kind of the main things that I was kind of thinking of. So I'm definitely really excited for the new year. And yeah, so because of that, Phil, why don't you kick us off with the first dad advice of 2025?
So real quick before I do that, I do have one personal goal this year that's a competition that I haven't brought up with anybody yet. I think I may have said it in passing, but there's, and I think maybe even a pre-show before we start recording, I talked this about with you, but there's a match. It's a true running gun that's in Wisconsin called the Badger Trekker. Um, that, yeah, I know it's a weird name, but it's find a running gun that's close to Michigan is very difficult. The Wolverine 5K is kind of in that vein,
I'm going to look
but
this up, the Badger
the
Quicker.
the Badger Trekker. So look it up while
Trekker. Okay.
while I'm talking about it. So it's BADGER, than Trekker. But it's a more of a true style running gun where you're kind of jogging between the positions, and you've got uh, certain shooting positions you have from there. The distances I think are typically a little bit longer. I got to do a little more research on this one specifically, but it's close enough where I could make it, and I've got family that live in Wisconsin and friends that live in Wisconsin that I could stay with to reduce the costs. But it's in late August. I want to shoot it, and I'm using this kind
Oh,
of as a goal to. Normally, I would get in somewhat
Milwaukee.
shape. Yeah, just north of Milwaukee. Normally, I would work to get
I see west of Milwaukee.
the one I looked at was right on the coast, but
My
well, I'll
dude,
verify.
I
It's in
literally,
Wisconsin.
I have family in Waukesha.
Perfect. So we're gonna go stay with Tyler's family.
I don't know
Uh,
how they feel about guns though, so we'll see. They're
well,
okay. They're kind of family, but we can
if
talk
they
more
if
about
they
who
don't
they are
if they don't
later.
know. Anyway, it without doing the Wolverine 5K this year, which will most likely not happen, I want to find something to help keep in shape. And this may actually require me to get up to that next level of really focusing on cardiovascular shape. Especially as I get older, I think that's going to be more of a focus on stuff that I should do. So I really want to do the Badger Trekker run and gun. It's late August, so I've got plenty of time to be able to get into shape to run it. A lot of the equipment that you run in Zombie can be pushed into service for that because you'll typically wear a chest rig, a belt with a pistol set up, anything kind of lightweight that you can run with that. A lightweight, either pistol AR or SBR or whatever you want to run to be able to, like, again, get from point A to point A with point A to point B with that is going to be something I'll start like really focusing on to keep that gear light and to be able to run that match. So that's what I'm thinking personally. That's my next goal. Again, I always try to have those goals coming into a year. It's at a time frame where I may interfere with some work stuff, but I think I can make it work. I got a conference around that time of year that I may be able to schedule around. But that's kind of my goal from that perspective. So from a dad advice, let's Tyler. So since you try to kick it toward me, but I'm gonna actually have you do it. But Tyler, go ahead and give us some closing advice, sir.
From Dr. John Deloney's book, Building a Non Anxious Life. So, hey, Ramsey Solutions, sponsor us. I know you're a gun guy. He is. I know he collects guns. They live in Tennessee, dude. They're definitely all gun people over there.
Oh, for sure.
But all that to say, in his book, Building a Non Anxious Life, I think this will actually be really helpful for me personally. I think a lot of people, especially in the new year, at the very foundation and core of a non anxious life is based on this one single premise: you are fully seen, heard, and known, and you are still loved, and you fully know others and choose to love them too. Obviously, I'm not married, but I think that is the beauty of marriage, how you're with another person, another sinner, really, because we're all sinners, especially in my worldview. I think we look at that's the one issue of Marxism. At the core of Marxism, they believe that the core of every human being is good, when in
Mm,
reality, we know the opposite.
hmm
In my worldview, as a biblical Christian, at the core of humans is evil, is sin. That's why we needed Jesus to save us from our sin. So, because of that, that's why with marriage is so beautiful. Is now you're with another person who fully sees you and knows you and loves you and accepts you for who you are. And because of that, you want to grow. Because of that, you want to change. Because of that, you want to do better. And that's what's so important about that. And for those someone like me who is unmarried, I'm dating now, which is awesome. But it's making sure that I surround myself with people who are my ride and die, those who see me and who have seen me cry, have seen me falling apart, who have seen me in my struggles and still love me anyway, who I know won't leave me. So I guess my advice for this year is making sure you surround yourself with the people who do see you and know you and love you.
That's really good advice, and it's really important. And I think you bring up something with marriage that again, you always want to. Can you want to make your? You don't want to force the other person to change,
Hmm.
but you also like you as an individual want to improve yourself to be better for that individual.
Yep.
And then one thing I know with my marriage has been really good has been knowing that you're including that person with the vast majority of your plans. Obviously, it's good to have your own hobbies outside of that individual, and we both do. We both have time off where we don't see each other, whether it's my wife going to play cards or me shooting with you guys. But it's being able to run those dreams by somebody and say, "Hey, this is crazy, but let's see if we can get there, right? And let's see if we can make that happen." And kind of rolls into my advice is when you have time off, which we're just coming off of a time of like Christmas and New Year's, time is precious. Make sure that you're making a plan with those individuals that you want to hang out with, including your family, your spouse, your friends, to make sure that you are not looking back at that time and saying, man, I wasted my 2 weeks or whatever it is that I had off from break or vacation or whatever. I wasted that time watching TV or I wasted that time um, like doing whatever it may have been on your phone or whatever that instead you would rather have spent that time with the people that you wanted and got the list on that you wanted to complete. So that is my advice. Anything else, Tyler, to wrap us up?
I think that's awesome. I do agree. I think that's something where, like you said, it's making sure it's choosing connection. I know, I feel like I'm kind of talking about this book a lot, but I do know one thing. Dr. Caroline Leaf. That's who I got that idea from. She's right there. Look at that.
Nice.
For
Yep.
bringing all the way back. I finally figured out who it was. But no, it wasn't Carol. No, it was. But either way, I know one thing that he talks about in here is about choosing connection. And that's where I love what you says. Make sure that yes, it's good to decompress. Yes, it's good to kind of make
Yep.
sure remember that you are two separate entities, but at the same time, you making sure you still connects with the people who care about you and who love you, and
Right.
being very proactive and very intentional about that. Because unfortunately, we live in a society that has never been more quote unquote connected because of our phones, because of social media, but at the same time, so isolated because of that, because we're not making meaningful connections anymore. It's a, what my mentor would like to say, faux relationships. They're not real. They're very surface level. They're not deep. So that's why we are the loneliest generation ever. I look at my
Yeah.
generation as Gen Zers, and I look at the alphas coming up and how it is very lonely because no one knows how to actually have a conversation anymore. They don't know how to connect. They don't know how to be open and transparent and raw.
Yep. No, I agree with all that you said. It is hard to be like and be intentional, and people, there's so many things to distract us, right?
Mhm.
So even if you're going to be intentional on not doing anything, put that on your list. Like we put on our list, and said we're going to take days to decompress, and we
Exactly.
did that this week. So,
Cool.
but all right, with all that, we want to thank everyone for listening in on our first podcast of the new year. We hope that you also have goals and plans and things that you want to do for next year, and things that you want to do to improve yourself. We hope that you continue to listen, and we'll have a lot more entertaining content and educational content coming up for you. So we encourage you to like, subscribe. We've got some content coming up with YouTube. We're actually video coming out for YouTube. Some match stuff from Zombie Invitational that we talk all the time about, but want to be able to show you what that match looks like. Uh, Anything else that I missed, Tyler, for closing?
That's it. Just like Phil said, remember to like, comment, subscribe, rate us on rate. Why do I emphasize the
Yes.
rate so much? Rate us
Yep.
on your local podcasting service, whether it is Amazon or Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Remember, you feel free to click the link in our bio, acceptable link dot link tree / acceptable accuracy, or email us at acceptableaccuracy@gmail.com for any of your questions. Please email us. So this way, I would love to have a Q&A episode one day because not one person's emailed us yet. Hey,
Hey.
eventually we'll
Yep.
probably have our own website for our own emails as well. So we're working
Yeah.
on that too. So
Yep.
cool. Thank you so much, everyone. Happy New Year, and we will see you on our next episode.
See ya.